much easier. If it takes something physically, an egg and a sperm, for something physically from a man and physically from a woman in order to create a human being, does it not make sense that we also need something emotionally, spiritually, socially, relationally, all of those things from both of them in order for that person to really develop?
My father was very hardworking. He was an excellent provider, just responsible. You know, he just took care of everybody, took care of everything. And some of the things that I took from him that weren't, you know, the best was he's authoritative over his family. He called the shots, you know what I'm saying? Which later on in life sort of translated into distance because he wasn't like as nurturing as he could have been. He wasn't as present as he could have been. As we got older, I would say became into our teenage years, that distance became more aware and more apparent, in our lives. We sort of like went out and then we sort of came back in with our relationship. You know what I mean? I became a man and I was able to see eye to eye with him. So, and where I'm finding myself at now with my teenagers is I'm starting to see that distance develop.
That's an interesting thought and very important point you just made about that distance that happens. Is that inevitable, do you believe, with teenagers? Or do you think it is something that you can do to minimize that drift, that
Right.
teenage drift? What do you think?
I like that term, drift.
Yeah,
So this is a thing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Real Life Matters, where we talk with real life people about real life issues with the effort and a desire to come up with some real life solutions. My name is Jason Perry and I am your host, and I am so glad that you're going to be with us for this episode. Joining me today are two of my friends, and if you've watched any of our past episodes, then you will recognize these two faces of Laurance Reynolds and Wesley Robinson. And today we're going to be talking about a huge and hugely important topic of navigating fatherhood. And so you say, well, why in the world would I listen to these guys talking about fatherhood? So with me, I am a father. I've been a father now for 31 years. And so I have two birth children. And so that helps me in some of my fatherhood issues, but I also have fatherhood issues myself in terms of having grown up without a father. And I like to say that even at my age, at 65 years old, I've never called a man dad in my life. And so that gives me a perspective on fatherhood in terms of being a father and not having had a father. But when I look at these two brothers here with Laurance and Wesley, they add some other elements to this whole fatherhood discussion. And so I've kind of summarized their stories to get it down to a nutshell. Laurance is a newlywed new dad. He just celebrated his first anniversary, if I'm not mistaken, about a week ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he just celebrated his first anniversary about a week ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Happy anniversary, man.
Yeah, but what's interesting for him though is that he immediately became a stepdad of a teenage girl and a 7-year-old son, and he and his wife are now co-parenting with a custodial dad. Wesley, not to be outdone, has been married, I think you told me, 8 years. Okay. Yep. Make sure you got that right.
8 years.
My wife is watching.
I double checked.
Okay. Wesley's been married for 8 years, and not only do he and his wife have two children that they had together, they both have a child from a previous relationship, and that means that Wes is navigating being a birth parent, a co-parent, and a step parent. And I don't know how he has hair doing all of that. So
The grace of God.
yeah, that's a lot of navigating, whole lot of rocks that you can hit.
Yeah.
So did I get all of your stuff right?
Yeah.
You got it all right? Okay.
Yep.
So I just want to jump in we have a ton of questions. I asked them to come up with some questions. I have a lot of questions, but we're just going to jump in with a couple of general questions. Just what are some of the challenges and concerns that you have about being a father, just in general, not getting into the woods, the deepness, but in general?
Questions I've had, especially marrying someone who has children, which was intentional on my behalf. Curious about personalities and upbringings with this, like, a lot of times, your children will get some of their personality traits come from you and the environments and things like that. So coming into a household and I'm the new person, I'm the new guy. It's just like coming in the middle of something. If you versus being there from the beginning, you're coming right in the middle of things. So that was probably one of the biggest things, is just like, okay, don't come in rocking the boat too much. Don't come in too timid, try to find that medium. And we can go into later. There's some rocky stuff.
So just trying to find your rhythm.
Yeah.
Coming into an established setting, trying to find your rhythm in that setting.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, place.
What about you, Wes?
Well, I can tell you one of the challenges that I'm having now is I have, like you said, 2 children by my wife and 1, aside from that, before that. And I'm also a step parent. So it's 2 different age groups that we're talking about. I have preteens and teenagers, and a teenager, and then I have young children, 5 and 3. So it's a big gap within the ages, and you almost have to transition your parenting style between both. And that's what I'm navigating, or attempting to navigate right now, is just trying to figure out how do you deal with the smaller children and the way that they can understand and handle, parenting, your parenting, and then shifting that over to the older kids who need something totally different from you. You know what I mean?
So I wonder, it's almost like you've gone through this, now you're coming back and you're doing it again.
Yeah.
So is that beneficial? The fact that you have older kids, is there a level of, I've already watched this TV show once.
Yeah. It has its benefits and no.
He's like, yeah, that helps, man. Absolutely not.
The benefit to it is that, it's certain scenarios that I've already, roads that I've already crossed. I know what to do in certain situations. Can't prepare for it. They're all different. Yep. They have different personalities. They need different things. So you can't just do what you did for the first group to the second group all the time.
Right.
So, yeah, it's pluses and minuses, specifically with boys. So my eldest that I had, prior to my marriage was a boy, Torian. He's 16 now. I went through a lot of growing pains with raising a young boy, and me and my wife had 2 boys. I have 2 boys, and it's a lot of similarities, what we're dealing with. So, yeah.
How has the way you were parented impacted the way you were parenting? And maybe even more specifically, how was the way you were parented by your father? Is that impacting the way you are parenting as a father?
For myself, absolutely. My father he's a veteran, and he was a fireman. And so with that, he was very organized, very militant. Wasn't mean. He was stern. He was always fair, though. And so I have, how many of us is it? It's 8 of us. I have 7 brothers and sisters. And so we are all accustomed to the ways of the Reynolds household and how we were brought up. My sister runs her household the same. All my siblings run their household very similar. And so coming into my marriage, and when me and my wife started living together, I think we moved in together, like a month before we got married. I came in with the same mindset of, okay, We're going to get these organized. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And I did not take into account of how they were living before me. So I'm coming in and I'm shaking things up. It's like, wait, you already knew, and now you living with us, and now you're trying to change our normal way of living? Like, no. And I'm just over here like, man, like, what? But this was my environment. This is what I knew the entire time. It was like, this was my norm. But I've come to realize as I've grown a closer relationship with God, how much of a God-fearing man my father was, and his patience. His patience. He always kept himself under control. I never heard my parents like arguing or anything like that. There was no like real lashing out. There's moments where it's like we did some stuff that we had no business doing. I understood how he was able to raise not just the 8 of us, but we've adopted other kids along the way in a sense, not traditionally adoption, but we have had people live with us for a year or more at times. And so all those mouths to feed, all those different personalities and characteristics, while Wes had to experience fatherhood and then had kids again, I was the youngest, so I just experienced my siblings and the things that they went through and kind of learned from them of what not to do.
Right.
He was the reason why I wanted to get married and have a family.
What about you, Wes? How do you think the way you were fathered impacts how you father?
My father was very hardworking. He was an excellent provider to his children. He had 8. I was the youngest too, so I know what that feels like. Just responsible, he just took care of everybody, took care of everything. That's a lot of the positive things that I got from how I was fathered by him. Some of the things that I took from him that weren't, the best was he's authoritative over his family. He called the shots. You know what I'm saying? What he said goes, and which later on in life sort of translated into distance. Because he wasn't like as nurturing as he could have been. He wasn't as present as he could have been. As we got older, I would say became into our teenage years, that distance became more aware and more apparent, in our lives. We sort of like went out and then we sort of came back in with our relationship. You know what I mean? I became a man and I was able to see eye to eye with him. So, and where I'm finding myself at now with my teenagers is I'm starting to see that distance develop. I'm aware of it, which is a good thing, but navigating and making sure that I don't let what happened to me and my father happen to me and my children. That's one of the things that I'm dealing with.
That's an interesting thought and very important point you just made about that distance that happens. Is that inevitable, do you believe, with teenagers? Or do you think it is something that you can do to minimize that drift, that teenage drift? What do you think?
I like that term, drift. So this is a thing.
It's definitely a thing. Definitely a thing.
Okay, that's good to know.
The teenage drift is definitely a thing. So how do you think you minimize teenage drift?
I was a teenager once, obviously. It's something you said, always keep the relationship. And I think about that, and I think about my teenage daughter. I want the best for her. I want her to, I want to support her whenever she wants to do. When she comes in excited about something, I'm not chastising her about her room. Just having that conversation with her about whatever she's excited about. Keeping that open line of communication. I realized that if I focus too much on the things of chores and homework and school and stuff like that, it's like that seems like that's all they hear. They don't hear enough of the praises or just the regular chit-chat conversations. And so it builds up a wall kind of, because like if I come say something to them, they're going to ask me to do something, or if I come talking about this and I know my room ain't the best, they gonna get on me about that. So
what do you think? How do you mitigate teenage drift?
Right. So, like I said, I've been very intentional on trying to mitigate the drift. And one of the things that I've been experimenting with lately is taking off my cape. My younger children, they think I'm Superman. They think I can solve every problem in the world. I can fix everything. I don't make mistakes because, in their eyes, I do everything for them, and what I'm realizing with my teenager, specifically my son, my oldest, is that I have to become more human to him. And this is all experimental, somebody please tell me if I'm doing it wrong, but I'm slowly taking off the cape for him and showing him, my weaknesses. I'm becoming vulnerable to him. I'm telling him about my feelings, things that my father never did for me. And what I notice is that when I do have these conversations with him where I'm taking off my cape, I get his attention. His ears go up. He actually listens, you know what I mean? He turns down the radio. Wait, hold on. You messed up too? You did this? You made this mistake? Like, when they hear that you are, just a man, they become more in tune with you, it seems like. So I don't know, it seems to be working. It's one of those longitudinal experiments. That's what they call it, where you won't know until later on.
Over a period of time.
Yeah, you won't know until you see it later. But I'm gonna stick with that for a little while.
No, I think that that's the key. And I can tell you, as a parent, as I look at my children, having gone through those stages, and my children, at the time of this recording, are 30 and 27. And so, as you all were talking, I'm thinking of all kind of stories, thinking of all kind of scenarios and different things that happen. So I'll give you a couple of things. One, the way you minimize teenage drift, I don't think you can eliminate it. I think that's the nature of being a teenager. You're trying to figure out, how do I live on my own? How do I develop my own attitude? How do I develop my own identity? And the only way you can do that is to drift away from the peer where you've been anchored all of your life. It's the only way that's going to happen. So that's just a natural thing. So it's not a bad thing. It's bad when they're out in the middle of the ocean by themselves with no connection. But you want them to be able to drift a little bit away from you to develop their own identity. You also want enough of an anchor, that there's an anchor in their life, that they don't want to drift so far away from you that there's no connection. And the only way you do that is that you build relationships. So I think you have to be very, very intentional about building those relationships younger. I think about, and that means being involved. It means being present, emotionally present, not just physically present, because there are a lot of men that are physically present, but they're not emotionally present. And so in terms of being able to share thoughts, I love that statement that you made about taking off the cape. I might steal that one. I'll give you credit the first time, but after 3 times, it's going to be, man, I got this brilliant thought one day. So, but I love that idea of taking off the cape, because there's a humanity on it. And so, again, couple of illustrations. One, I think about when my daughter was 12, we used to do what we call daddy-daughter walk talks, where we would just walk around the block and just talk about stuff. Sometimes she was in trouble, sometimes she was not. But it was just talking. And so as a result of that, sometimes we was talking about the day, sometimes we was talking about, why are you doing this? And why do you act this way? Or just talking about stuff. Well, as a result of that, now that didn't mean that because of that, we didn't experience drift. I talk about my children publicly a lot. But, as a teenager, I was like looking for adoption agencies. I mean, I was like, girl, you know what, you too much. It's like, so there were issues there. But I look at that, but we still were able to talk even through those things. And I had deposited in the relationship bank so that later when I needed to make a withdrawal, the check wasn't bouncing. But if you haven't deposited anything in the bank and later you need to have those conversations, there's nothing to withdraw from. There is no relationship to withdraw from. So I think that that's really important, that you establish that now as younger ones. I can talk. You can come and talk to me about anything, and I don't freak out because it's, oh man, I think, why are you doing that? That's important. I think another thing that's important is to be able to show, like I said, show those realities of humanity. So I think about my kind of taking off the cape with my son in one way was his first 10 years in terms of school just drove us crazy because he's extraordinarily intelligent, but he just would not show it. He hid it on purpose because he's like, that's too much effort. If I get an A, y'all going to expect me to get an A every time, so I can't show you that I have the capacity.
Sounds like me.
Yeah. So it just drove me nuts. And so, but in 10th grade, I made a switch. And instead of me fussing, punishing, taking away Game Boys and all that stuff like that, I made the decision that every Saturday, no matter what my schedule was, unless I was out of town, but every Saturday we went to breakfast. My son loved to eat. He loved breakfast. And so that became our deal. We began to go to breakfast, and my talk with him, the general theme of my talk all the time was, this is what men do. Because I wanted him to understand, you're transitioning into a different phase of your life. And I need you to know what I expect and what you should be expecting of yourself as a man. How do you treat your mom? How do you treat your sister? How do you treat yourself? How do you live in this world as a man, not as a boy, but as a man? And so I think that established relationship to a certain degree. Now, to be honest with you, I can say that. With my daughter, it was easier to see. With my son, I didn't always see it. Matter of fact, I sometimes had some real questions. Have I lost him? I don't know if, and it's just so interesting that I questioned that all the time, but I maintained it. Well, I remember I was teaching at a leadership academy in Denver, and we were talking about, I think he had just entered the military, and I was talking to my students, and I asked him to come in one day to talk about something that me and him had talked about, because I'd actually built a whole class around one of our conversations. I had built a whole leadership development class around a conversation that we had had. I won't talk about that right now. But as he came up to the room to talk, and he was talking about heroes, and I have this on video because I never would have believed it if I didn't have it on camera. And he said, "Oh, my dad is my hero." And I'm sitting in the back, I'm going, "Dope! What?"
I'm like, really? Me?
What, me? What, do you have a different dad other than me? I couldn't believe it. And I sat there and I listened to him. And man, it was one of the proudest moments in my entire life. That my son saw me as his hero. And he talked about why. He didn't just say he's my hero and left it. He talked about why. But that came out of those conversations. And so I would say to you that one of those things, you must invest in the relationship bank. You must make deposits. You must spend time where they just see you as real people. That doesn't mean that you don't operate as the captain of your house. But there's a reality and there's a humanity that I can just sit down and talk with you about stuff, and we can laugh and talk. And now I look at it at 27, and I'm seeing stuff that I just never saw before. I mean, he calls me up now. My son never. Now he calls me up, and it's always an hour conversation when we're on the phone, and that just never happened before. And I want to ask him so badly, and if he watches this, he might respond. But I want to ask him so badly, what's going on? Why all of a sudden now are you calling me and talking to me for an hour and a half, whereas before, if I heard from you every 2 months, we were like, yay. What happened? So, but I'm not going to look a gift horse gift horse in the mouth right now. I'm just going to enjoy it.
it.
You know.
Right.
So, but with all of that, but all of those stories were to say build relationships, establish the ability to have a conversation and to build those relationships now. Apart from, and some stuff you let it go. Some stuff you let go. And let me give you one more story on this in terms of relationships and letting stuff go. I had bought a new car. First new car I had bought in like 10 years, right? Brand new car. We were living in Denver at the time. And so we had a massive snowstorm. I mean, a massive snowstorm. We were in the house for a day because you couldn't get out. So when we finally were able to get out, I went out and I'm outside and I'm shoveling out my driveway because it's probably like 3 feet of snow in the driveway. My car is in the garage, and my car was out in the driveway. My daughter comes out to help me shovel, and my back is turned, and I hear, and I turn around, and she has a shovel shoveling off the hood of my new car with a metal shovel. And all I could see was like scratch marks, claw marks along the hood of my car. That's all I could see. And I turned around and I was about to say to her, what? And before I could say anything, it was like one of those TV shows where you see it and a person is there and everything around them stops. That's literally what happened. And everything stopped. And this is what I heard in my head. The damage that you will do to her, your relationship, about the damage that she's done to your car, will last longer than the damage that she's done to your car. And it started again. And I turned, I said, let's not use a shovel. I appreciate your help. Let's use a broom. Because she had seen me with the broom. She was like, I don't know. She was young, 6, 7 years old. And so I gave her a broom and let her do it. We kept that car for 19 years. I did significantly more damage to that car than she ever did. But what would have happened if I had yelled at her at that moment? I would have crushed her little heart because she was just trying to help daddy. But now I would have told her, don't help daddy because you can't do it perfectly.
Right.
And so that's an example of just our humanity and recognizing that the relationship is far more important than the stuff. You know, they say don't cry over spilt milk. Some stuff, it just don't matter. It really doesn't matter. You know, a scratch on that car. And you know what's interesting? I told you I kept that car for 20 years, literally 19 years to be exact. I couldn't find the scratches on the car. I looked for them. I couldn't see them. Because in my head, they were Grand Canyon size. In reality,
It was super small.
it was super small.
Right.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? And I can tell you, I can show you all of the scratches I put on it. Couldn't show you any of the scratches that she put on it. So again, building relationship and being able to kind of put stuff in perspective now. Everything doesn't have to be fixed. Everything doesn't have to be perfect. Just so.
The thing I had a question about was the being emotionally present. Could you break that one down?
Being emotionally present.
Yeah.
And I think Laurance hit it too. You coming in and she's excited about something, you know, and it's like, girl, ain't no big deal. What's wrong with you? Have you ever heard the phrase, puppy love is love to the puppy? So you're say a lot of times, especially with girls, they're excited about certain things. And you're like, that's no big deal. Well, it's a big deal to them. And so be present with that. Like, oh man, let me show you. I'm excited about that too. Or if you're crying, don't be, or for the boy, you know, he comes and he starts crying. Boy, what's wrong with you? You better man up. That's not emotionally present because he might need to cry about that thing for a minute. Or he might need other words to be able to give them to help to show them how to properly engage their emotions, not to suppress them or be depressed by them, but to properly engage in their emotions because they can see you properly engaging in your emotions. The Bible says this: laugh with those who laugh, weep with those who weep. So that their emotions don't run them, but they don't run away from them either.
Being a soft place for them to land when their emotions are leading, you know.
Yeah, and being able to discuss them.
Yeah.
Because you understand yours, so therefore you understand theirs.
Right.
You know, and not dismissing their emotions, but also not allowing those emotions to completely control them.
Right.
To me, that's being emotionally present. But you've seen it. Well, you know, the stoicism. You know, don't. You know, dad comes in. Don't talk to dad. You know, let him. You know, don't talk to him. You know, let him have his paper and his pipe. You know, that kind of thing. But dad doesn't talk. Dad doesn't love. Dad's not excited about anything. Dad is only angry. Dad is only. No, I think that there's that importance of engaging them at those different levels.
That's tough though, because I talked to you before about frustration, you know, and when I get frustrated, you're gonna see it, you know, it comes out. It's not a good time to talk.
Yeah,
because my mind is all, you know, jumbled up and I can't really process what I'm trying to process what I'm going through. And I do that better internally than externally. You know what I mean? I need space and time to think and then figure it out from there. But having that open dialogue with just telling someone, yeah, I'm frustrated. Well, why are you frustrated? Because I got to do this, this, and I don't know how to do it.
So
that's tough.
Interestingly enough, when you was talking about your son and this experiment, I'm sticking in my head, I'm just like, it works. As I have an 8-year-old now, but his birthday just passed. But I think it was like a week or two ago, it was a bit busy day. I get home, so now it's time to cook dinner, and I ask him what he wants to eat because he has a lot of allergies, and I feel bad for him. So he can't have a lot of. He's allergic to eggs, nuts, you know, dairy, and something else, fish. So there's a lot of things that's eliminated for him. So whatever he wants to eat, I try to make sure I can accommodate. So I asked him what he wanted to eat, and he said he didn't know, and it was frustrating for me. And it's like, we go through this. I'm like, come on, man. I ask you this all the time. You should already know what you want. But I was frustrated. So I was like, I stopped myself and I said, okay, I'll figure something out. And I came back to him. I said, I'm sorry, buddy. It's just been, he said, I know. No, he said, who was it? I'm trying to get the story straight. I don't know. Let's fast forward to this part. He came into the kitchen. I'm washing dishes, and he said, stepdad, you think you can make me some nachos? I figured that'd be easy for you. I know you had a long day. And my insides just melted. I'm like, what? Yeah. And I said, yeah, I appreciate that. And like a few minutes later, I went in the room and talked to him, and it dawned on me that he listens. It's like 7 years old. Like I be talking to him, and sometimes I don't know if it's going in one ear out the other. And I never, we look at these kids as kids, but it's like they are sponges and they're absorbing all these things. And it's like, oh, he gets it. And this didn't happen overnight, but consistency with talking to him, with being vulnerable with him, with just talking to him at his level. It's allowed us to have our relationship to grow closer, and he listens better. He understands better. I mean, he's still an active 8-year-old. Like, he's going to be a boy, but I have a better understanding of him. He has a better understanding of me. And just a few gems I've heard in this short time together with y'all, I'm like, okay, I want to implement this. I want to implement that. So it works. I think a lot of times we get too hung up on just worldly things. And I know, at least I know for my daughter, for example, there was a time where she was not talking to us like if she didn't have to. But as time went on, and again showing love, she wants to come and talk to me again. And something I would have thought of trivial back then is like, oh, let me listen to her about this. You know, I interact with her because I miss having conversation with her. I miss the relationship that we were building, and it kind of got to a halt because things got too shaky. So now it's like, okay, we're talking, that's good, and she's coming to talk to me. So now the lines of communication are open on both ends, and so as she talks to me about things, I can talk to her about a little bit. And it's just dropping little seeds and hoping they'll grow one day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is. There is no script, y'all.
Absolutely none.
There is no script. It's just you're figuring it out. This is literally Indiana Jones. You're figuring this thing out as you go, you know, and you are, as a parent, you are learning to parent each child differently. My son and my daughter are so stinking different. It ain't even funny. They are so different. And so, like you said, with the stuff that you thought, I got this. Yeah, you ain't got nothing. That's what you got. You got nothing. Okay?
Got a whole new kid.
Right. You got a whole new kid. You got a whole new person, and you got to figure out what you can say to each one. And you can say what you can do with each one and how they respond so differently.
Yeah.
To the exact same stimulus. They will respond very differently because they're very different people. And so I think that, yeah, just being able to stop and say, well, what does this child need? What do they need? And what do they need from me? I think something else is also very important for us as men. We got to be willing to deal with our stuff so that we're not passing our stuff on to them.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't say, well, you know, so, okay, I normally get frustrated, and this is the way I act when I'm frustrated. But that acting may be doing damage to them because I need to model for them, what do I do when I'm frustrated? What do I do when I'm angry? What do I do when I'm sad? What do I do when I'm confused, when I don't know an answer? I need to model that for them, which means I need to deal with my stuff so I'm not passing on that to them. You know.
Can I add to that real quick? Model, and you talked about it too with your father, and I witnessed it with my own father. Model it, but also communicate to your kids about it. Explain it to them, because I saw it, and my father passed at 18, and so I had a lot of anger afterwards because it's like, whoa, you just left me hanging. Like, I don't know how to do the rest of it yet. And we didn't have it's one thing that he wasn't was vulnerable with me. He was a superhero. He did it all. I didn't know how he did all this stuff to this day. He was always busy, always doing stuff, but always available too. But we didn't have those conversations of how to deal with anger or how to do this. I saw him keep himself composed, but I didn't know what he was using. You know, found out it was God, obviously, but still with just the tangible human day to day, like how I deal with this and that is extremely important.
Yeah.
That's something I would have loved to have gotten from my father, and that's something I definitely want to give my kids.
Yeah.
So this is something that I could probably add to both of y'all then, because you lost your father at 18, and you never met your father. I suppose you had father figures though. I still have my father, right? And growing up, just like with your experience, I thought he was Superman. I thought he couldn't do anything wrong. I thought he was the strongest man in the world. And as I grew older and I'm starting to cross milestones that I saw him cross, like I have a job, I have a family, I bought a house, bought a car, like things that I'm seeing that I saw him do and then I'm doing, he becomes more human to me. Like we never had those conversations, but I'm seeing it. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm actually doing this better than what you did.
Right.
It's a very funny dynamic that you come to in that point where you start seeing your father. I mean, if you don't have those conversations outright, you start seeing it anyway, where it was the decision that he made and you faced with that same decision and you made a different decision, you know what I mean, based on everything that you learned. So that's an interesting crossroads that you get to. I mean, that you will get to, you know, in parenting, is that your child is going to see you as a man one day. Regardless if you let him know that you're a man, he's going to see you as a man one day because he's going to do everything that you've done, probably more. So
I think that is important. We forget it. Very often we want to see immediate results, an immediate acceptance of our wisdom. We want to see.
What's happened overnight?
Exactly. We want like, wait a minute. Our dad said it. Well, of course it's right. Yes. Right. No, it's like dad said it. That must mean it's wrong.
Right.
So, but you have to be willing to wait. I'll give you an example. Instead of a allowance, thank you. They didn't have an allowance because they used to always come, can I have money? Can I have this? And I was like, no. So after I was out, you know what? They don't understand money. So we put them on a budget rather than an allowance. With the budget, what they had to do was how much money, what do you need money for the entire month? You need money for whatever it is. And so they have to come up with a full budget for a whole month. I need this much money for lunch. I need this much money for this. And then that budget had to be passed by the board of directors of the corporation. Well, that was me and my wife. And so they came to us with their budget, and they gave us their budget, and we added stuff to it, took stuff away. You know, it's like, no, you don't get to go out to eat every single day. No, you can take lunch. That's why we got lunch meat here. So we set up the whole budget. And then once we determined how much that was, we gave them that amount of money at the beginning of the month. We gave them the entire amount. Now you must manage your budget.
I love that.
Okay. My son could make Washington cry. He'd hold on to that money forever.
That sounds like my son.
Usually within 2 weeks.
Oh, okay. It lasted that long, huh?
Right. You know, and so after a while, and I was crazy about it. I mean, it was like they had chores. And so with their chores, like my son, he had to take out the garbage. We always told him to take it out the night before because in the morning he was running late for the bus and then he wouldn't take it out. He wouldn't do it. Well, if in the morning I have to take out the garbage rather than you got to pay me. You just hired somebody to do your job.
Right.
You missed the bus. You got to pay me to take you to school because now you're calling a cab rather than you had a free ride and now you're calling somebody to do it. I have to stop I was trying to teach them certain things about money management, right? So I would say to them, I remember they came to me one point, it's like, I don't want to be on a budget anymore. I want to be on an allowance. This is crazy, Dad. Don't nobody do this but you. You know, and this is what I would say to them. If I teach you how to live within boundaries now, if I'm strict now, I'm a mean dad, and you will hate me. But 10 years down the road, when you have an 800 credit score, and you know how to manage your house, and you know how to manage, your finances, you will love me. But if I let you do everything you want to do now, you will love me now. But later on down the road, you will go, you didn't prepare me at all for life. I'm willing to wait. I'm willing to wait for you to respect what I'm doing. I look at that now, I'm glad I waited. Because I look at my kids now and they're phenomenal human beings. They both bought, one bought a house at the age of 23 and another one bought a house at the age of 27, and they're managing their finances and they're doing their things and they're running businesses and it's like, wow, you are so much further ahead than me than I was at your age. But it was because I was willing to be tougher and to suffer your wrath, now in order to prepare you for something later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So you have to think long term. As a parent, you got to think a little longer term, and it can't just be cool dads don't have long shelf life. You may create cool kids, but you will not create responsible adults. And my job, my responsibility is to teach my kids how to grow and to go, not to stay while I continue to pay.
Right. I know that's right.
So I want you to grow. I want you to go. Don't just stay here. And as long as you're here, guess what's paying? It's me.
Right.
And that's not creating a responsible human being.
No.
And that's my responsibility, and which means that you have to be able to take some hits now, but do the right thing. Be striving to do the right thing. So
that's a great idea. I can't wait to implement that one.
Okay,
I love
Kennedy,
that.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, but I want to go back and ask you a question. How do you navigate? How do you think you navigate parenting teens versus parenting younger kids? What are some things you think are different?
So with teenagers, it's kind of hitting on what you just said. I allow them to make more mistakes intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
Give them a little bit more room for error, a little bit more margin, and I give them more grace. Because they're transitioning into young adults, and these things are going to happen anyway. So it's best to happen under my watch, you know. So with the smaller kids, I'm a little bit more hands-on and more, you know, guiding them and making sure that they don't make the mistake in the first place. Just trying to teach them, you know, what to do, as opposed to with the older kids. All right, listen, I'll give you advice. Take it or leave it, and call me when you're done. Wherever it lands, you know. So, yeah, that's the biggest difference to me. You know. What about you?
Definitely a big difference. They got like a 7.5 year gap. So, with my son, it's easier in a sense because. He's gonna listen. Not as much attitude behind it or anything like that. Yet. And I'll be preparing my wife for that. She's like, "Oh no, not my baby." I'm like, "All right." When that boy started dropping, what'd you say, boy?
Mm-hmm.
But with my daughter, I noticed that I have a sense of urgency because when I stepped in. And I thought about it. I've been able to celebrate her 14th, 15th birthday with her. So I stepped in. When I met her, she was 13. And it's like, she's about to be 16, about to have a license now. And it's like, that's a lot of responsibility in itself. And so for me, I'm equating cleaning your room with responsibility. It's like, she can't keep a room clean, and then she's gotten better with that. So it's like, okay, there's hope. But it's teenagers, and for me, I think it's a thing with there's teenagers and there's young kids, and then there's teenage girls and teenage boys. And it's like teenage boys, I was a teenage boy. While we're not the same, it's like there's very similarities. I feel like I'm more prepared for that. Teenage girl, it's like For me and my daughter, again, it goes back to that keeping that communication. The differences have been the attitudes, the blatantly just not doing things and how to handle it. I feel like with a younger child, it's like, you take the iPad away, their world is gone. With a teenager, it's different. You got to get, I don't know, creative or what.
It's psychological for the.
It is. It's really psychological because it's like one day, everything's fine, and the next day, or maybe 15 minutes later, it's like, what's wrong with you?
Right.
Yeah.
What happened within these 15 minutes? You came in, you were jolly, you were fine. Now it's like, you know, your friend say something, did something, you know, but I know like this year has been a rocky year with our daughter, but it's smoothing out really nicely. Like her grades are good. She got like all B's. She's been keeping up with her responsibilities a lot better. So whatever we're doing is working, but I honestly couldn't tell you what that formula is.
I know with my young boys, the discipline has to come early. I believe that I had to establish myself with them early. And because I tell my wife this all the time, you kind of hit on it, it was funny. They're going to be standing over you in 5 years. And I remember the moment where I was cutting up with my mother as a young boy, and she tried to do something. I don't even remember what it was, but I just looked at her and I smiled. And it was like we both just looked at each other. She just shook her head and walked away, because it comes a point when you get so big, it's like there's nothing you could do with me.
That doesn't faze me.
So it's like you gotta, with boys, you kind of gotta get an early head start on whatever discipline you're gonna do, because I mean, once they start growing and getting big and they become bigger than you, then you ain't gonna be able to do nothing with them.
See, I think that goes back to relationship.
Yeah,
that's really important. My brain is ricocheting all over the place as I think about different things. But I think about a conversation I had with a young man that I'm mentoring. He is 6'3", about 260 pounds.
Sheesh.
He's a big boy,
Yeah.
you know, and significantly larger than his mother. And I know his mother. And his mother was like, man, he just drives me nuts sometimes. He won't do and he won't do. And so one day I'm sitting down talking with him. We sat down and I said, I understand you and your mom are struggling a little bit. And we started talking through that. And I said, yeah, that's normal. He's like, it is? I said, yeah. You were trying to establish yourself as a man. You were trying to figure out what this means as a man. You got some hair and you got your voice is a little bit bigger and you're significantly larger. And mom has been taking care of you all your life, and she's been holding the reins. Now you're saying, let me hold the reins. And so she's trying to hold on to protect you. You're trying to get away to be, now there's a struggle. Yep. There's a power struggle between this. And, when you were younger, your parents had authority and they could intimidate you. Now you realize that intimidation doesn't work. And there's nothing, mom can't snatch me up by my collar because she can't reach my collar. So what do I do with that? How do I do with that? How do I respond? And I said, listen, I need you to understand what your mom is trying to do. And you're okay that you're trying to establish. You need to establish your identity. But you also need to be able to establish a level of respect and obedience to understand within the context of your family what you're doing. So it's not just about intimidation, it's about respect. And so when I said that, he was like, wow, no, I never thought of it that way. Nobody ever explained it to me that way. But because they were just in the middle of the power struggle, they couldn't communicate what they both were feeling. They could only communicate, they could only just feel it and respond to that. So again, being able to establish those relationships and where there is respect. Yeah. And that's it. I think about one of my daddy-daughter walk talks with my daughter. I said to her one day, I said, why you don't give me a hard time like you give your mom? I tell you to do something, you do it. I said, you just give mom a hard time. You don't do that with me. Why? Again, daddy-daughter walk talk. We can do this. She said, Dad, you're a lot more scary than mom is. Yep. She said, you're scary. Mom isn't scary, right? And so the issue was like, mom will say, don't make me say it again. I'm not going to tell you don't make me say it again. That's not going to happen. Right. Just the very tone of a man's voice is different. Yeah. And that is different. And so I think that this idea that moms are loving and gracious, and that's wonderful, but there's also a place for what the father brings.
Right.
That is different. And that actually goes to another question. I was about to go to a different question, but this takes us to something else. I think that is really important that we establish those things. And I know that, I think kids a lot of times learn how many calls do I get before it's serious. If mom's going to say do it, I don't get serious until it's the 5th time when she says do it. Because then that's when she calls Jason Leon Perry. See, when my mother calls your middle name, you know you've torn it. Right now, I better get serious. Okay? I wanted my kids to understand when I said do it, I really meant do it the first time. It ain't going to be a 3rd time.
Right.
You may get 2, but it's not going to be 3.
There ain't gonna be no 3.
And so there is something that's very important about it. Like you said, establishing the authority within the family, and establishing those things. But I think that there's a couple of places I want to go, and I want to get both of the questions out so that y'all know.
Okay.
One of them is, what is the importance? Why do you think dads are important in a child's upbringing? That's one question. And the other one I think I want to get to is, how do you balance discipline and grace when parenting your children? Okay, so let's start with that first one, because I think it flows from what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Why do you think dads are important in a child's upbringing?
Yeah, I think it's just what you said. It's that balance, that counterbalance with the feminine nature of a woman, of mom, the nurturer, the protector, and you have that masculine nature of your father, the provider, the disciplinarian, the one who fixes everything.
But moms can do all of that. Dads are not necessary.
No, I disagree because just like you said, I'm that voice in my house, right? My wife will say something to the boys, and she'll have to repeat herself 3 times. Now she just says one time and they don't listen. Wes, I know what that means. I know what that means. I step in.
Like WWE, tag you in.
And it gets done. Absolutely. And it gets done. I don't think that we want their mothers to have to play that role and play that position. You know what I mean? They should be in the role where they are as far as being that nurturer. When you have to call them to become more masculine and take on the father's role, I think that's where you get problems. In raising kids. Yeah.
Man, do you realize how unpopular and dangerous that statement is in this present culture that you just
Absolutely.
All right, you can edit that out,
No, I don't want you editing it out.
No, but it's just true. It's absolutely true.
In the culture we're living in right now, it is unpopular, politically incorrect, and even dangerous for us to make any distinction between men and women in terms of how we parent and those differences. There's a video, a podcast I saw the other day, and I can't think of the actor's name, but he was on the Pivot podcast. And on this podcast, he was talking about how he raised his sons, and to say yes, sir, and no, sir, yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and different things. And it was fascinating to me. Matter of fact, I think I even forwarded the video to my gatekeeper group because I thought it was a great video. And then a few days later, I'm hearing this dude is being canceled all over the internet because of his toxic masculinity. It's like he told his sons to say yes, sir, and no, sir, and no, ma'am, and yes, ma'am, and he's toxic. Something is wrong with that. I'm sorry, and you can cancel me all you want, right? But there's something wrong with that when we cannot recognize that there is a difference between men and women, and we play different roles. Doesn't mean that one role is better than or worse than. Different is just different.
I think it's important. It's really frowned upon because we know about a lot of single mothers and dads being absent, so they have to play both roles. but it works on both sides, whether you're a single mother or a single father. You need that masculine side, you need that feminine side, you need that nurturing side, you need that authoritative disciplinary side. Because I know of single fathers who's raising boys and girls and things like that, and we can't, as God didn't create us to be like that. If that was the case, then we would produce our own children and raise them ourselves. But it's that balance. It's that balance for a reason, and it's needed, whether it be a father or a mother. It's just crazy.
In our gatekeeper group once, I asked these guys the question, what good are dads? What's the point? And I said, so I asked this question. I said, what do you bring to the table that your wife doesn't? And they started listening. They started listing all of these things, finances and protection and all these things. And I said, a woman can do all of those things. A woman can provide. My wife made more money for me than for many years. She can provide. I know some woman that'll kick your butt. She can get a gun. She can be strong. She can be protective. I said, so a woman can do all of those things. So what good are you? And they were quiet because I think I stumped them because they were only thinking in terms of some tangible things. I said, here's the difference. There's a difference in perspective. It's a very different perspective because we are different as human beings. And again, this is my worldview. So somebody might not have this worldview, and that's fine. But this is my worldview, that the Bible tells us that God created mankind, male and female, he created them. Together, what the male brings, what the female brings together gives us a full image of God. But it's not just a female perspective, it's not just a male perspective. And for years, for the last 14, 15 years, I've been doing professional development with social service agencies. And one of my primary topics has been around fatherhood. That's what I've been doing the professional development on. And one of my primary topic has been, do we really need dads? And for the first 5 years of doing it, every single time I did it, somebody came back in one of my trainings telling me, no, fathers were unnecessary. Fathers are unnecessary. I constantly heard that for 5 years. And it was because many of them, the people in these settings had not seen positive fathers and had seen women having to navigate that world by themselves. And so therefore, fathers were unnecessary. So I began to use this illustration. I actually, in my mentoring program, I said this to my boys in my mentoring program. Do we really need dads? And 60% of them said fathers were unnecessary. So I used this illustration. I brought up a boy to the front of the room and who had on lace-up shoes. And I stood him up on a table so everybody could see him. And I said, put your left hand in your back pocket. And he said, okay. And then I leaned down and I untied his shoes. I said, okay, now I need you to tie your shoe up. Tie your shoes up. And I said, no, you can only use your one hand. Keep your hand in your pocket. You can only tie. So he reached down and he tried to tie his shoe. And what was interesting was watching him figure it out, to navigate that out. And over the years, I've been doing this for like 15 years. So over the years, I've seen people ask for help. I've seen people in the room say, can I help them? I've seen kids actually figure it out, how to tie the shoe with one hand, but they got it done. And then, so I said, so you figured out how to operate without your left arm. They said, yes. I said, so I can cut your left arm off because your left arm is unnecessary. No. I said, no. I said, according to your logic, if you learn how to operate without something, that thing becomes unnecessary. And they said, well, it would have been easier if I said, yes, that's my whole point. Yes, you can figure it out you can figure out how to operate in the absence of that dad. But the absence does not mean that they're unnecessary. It means that you've adapted. And there are times when you need help. There are times when it would be significantly better. I know very few single mothers who say, this is ideal. Very few. Now, will they say, yes, I figured it out. Yes, I'm doing the best I can. Yes, yep. Now, and again, in me saying this, let me make this very clear point. My mother raised 7 kids by herself. My mother's a tough woman. Was a tough woman. She's passed now. But she did it. But there is not a day that she would ever tell you on any circumstances, man, I love this. This was awesome.
Can't wait to do it again.
Give me some more.
Right.
No, you can do it, but you can also, you say, man, it should be so much easier. If it takes something physically, an egg and a sperm, something physically from a man and physically from a woman in order to create a human being, does it not make sense that we also need something emotionally, spiritually, socially, relationally, all of those things from both of them in order for that person to really develop?
Right.
And that doesn't mean that single mothers are failing. That is not what that means at all. It's one of the things that I learned over the years as I was doing it. I realized that the negative reaction I was getting was that very often people, when we start talking about the importance of dads, it was a zero-sum game. When I said something about dads were important, what the women were hearing me say was that mothers are not important.
Right.
That's what they were hearing. And when I realized that, I started addressing that. I said, I'm not saying that you're doing a bad job. I'm just simply saying that, and I'm not telling you that if a man comes in, he automatically is going to make everything better. I'm not telling you that either. But I am telling you that there is something positive that is added to that child into their development when there is a healthy dad.
Right.
A dad figure involved. That's all I'm saying to you. You know, there are times when the birth fathers should not be involved because they're toxic. But don't say that men are unnecessary. And I've been hearing that for 15 years in this work that I've been doing. And so, but that perspective is really important. There's a often joke, and I'm purely joking when I say this. It's an analogy. It's a hyperbole, but I often would say this: mothers can't teach little boys how to pee. Now I know, and when I'm in a room and I have women going, listen to what I'm saying. I said, listen, my mother taught 5 boys how to pee. Okay, so I get it. I said, but I'm making a point. Little girls, if you notice, if you've raised children, you know that little girls become potty trained a lot faster than boys do. And also know that this, and this may be TMI for most people, but I think this is just reality. Little girls sit down on the toilet, do their business, they get up and they go. They ain't got to think about it. You ain't got to look at nothing. You ain't got to think about nothing. But with a little boy, you're standing up. There's hand-eye coordination that's involved in the process.
Yes.
Your gun is not stable. And there's a large person standing behind you yelling at you for your bullets being all over the ceiling on the floor. It's intimidating, right? I said, but guess what? That mother is not thinking like a little boy. The mother is thinking about like a woman. That's a different perspective.
Right.
A dad understands that.
Yeah.
A mother does not have that perspective, so she doesn't see it. You know, and so what I'm saying is that there's differences. Mothers tend to prepare their children to protect their children from the world. Dads tend to prepare their children
For the world.
It's very different. very different, and understanding those different. So there's a perspective. I think about my children playing sports, and I'm in the stands, and my son comes home and he's like, man, that ref cheated us. They called that foul at the end of the game and we lost by a point. You know, and his mother was like, yeah, they did. They called that foul on you. He should have hit you. Mom's going to protect her baby.
Mm-hmm.
And my response is, but y'all missed 18 free throws.
Mm-hmm. what about all the other mistakes you made?
Right.
I'm not going to protect you. So it's different.
That's the reality.
That's a reality.
Mm-hmm.
But moms are natural nurturer, and
Right.
that's great. You can't just, it's great.
Right.
But you need both to balance.
Right,
And I think that's what I said. The perspectives are different. And different is not bad. Different is just different.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to manage, that is why it is so, even if the dad is not involved. I've never called a man daddy in my life, ever. But there are men in my life that I learned from. There are men that I watched that helped me understand how I navigate the world as a man, not navigating the world as a woman. That is important.
Yeah.
Because how a man sees the world and how people see men is different than how people see women. And as a man, you need to learn how to navigate that. And you need to be able to respond to the world in that way and know how to do that. That's why dads are so important.
Right.
And that's why dad figures are so important.
Right.
Those type of things, that perspective, that completeness, those things are important. So
that was a great analogy, or that was great. The tying of the shoe was a really great example. I think anybody can understand that.
Yeah.
No matter what level, what age, you're gonna understand. You need both. It makes it a lot easier.
Makes it a lot easier.
You can do it without, but if but
it's
makes it a lot easier.
Lot faster, lot easier, lot less frustration.
Definitely.
Okay. So here's the other question I want to ask. How do you balance discipline and grace when parenting children? How do you balance discipline and grace?
For me, it's much more discipline when it comes to the younger children.
Yeah.
With the younger ones, it's a lot of just correction. Doing something wrong, I got to make sure you're doing it right. With the older ones, as they become more mature, then I start giving them a lot more grace, not because they deserve it, but because I know that you're learning about the world and what we're doing, and their mistakes in a few years are going to count against them more heavily. So I'm going to give you more grace while you're here. Like, listen, this was a mistake. If you do this, this is what's going to happen. Not keeping them from trying or attempting, but just trying to guide their decision. And then when they do make mistakes, I don't want to shut them down. I don't want you to take that as I could never try this again. Mm-hmm. No, I want you to. Life is about getting knocked down and getting back up and trying again. We do this every day. So that's the underlying lesson that I try to give my older kids, just to keep trying. So you have to keep giving them grace. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You don't want them to be quitters. You want them to keep trying.
Giving more grace has been helpful, and let's say this, being more human with my kids has allowed me to understand how to kind of discipline and parent them better. Just simply talking to them. Talking to an 8-year-old is real interesting. It's enjoyable. And so when I can help him comb through his thoughts and formulate things, and understand where his perspective of things is coming from, and I understand like his frustrations with school. It's like you're 8, and so adults are not gonna listen to you. But he don't be wrong. Like he really don't be wrong. And I get it. Like I don't know if he's gonna be a lawyer or something one day. He's really good with the technicals. So I'll be like, no iPad this morning. Get dressed. Let's do XYZ, and then you can get on your iPad. Okay. Can I watch YouTube on the TV? It's like, okay, no electronics but he's just asking questions. He's trying to see where's my boundaries, how far can I go? And so what used to be frustrating, because I looked at it as, oh, he's just trying to be defiant and trying to find his way, but he's just trying to figure out, just like we try to figure out in life. Okay, this way ain't working for me. How can I figure it out this way? So understanding how his mind works, my mind works the same way. I got a plan A through Z, and then after Z, I got 1 through a million. There's always, you never give up, you never quit, like you said. So understanding that now it's conversations versus frustration,
Right.
versus me. Why are you doing this or anything else? And he listens. When he's supposed to be off the iPad at the time, he used to come and tell us, and it's like, you don't have to come tell us, just do what you're supposed to do. Just having those conversations. And then with my daughter, again, it's just having those conversations. Now with teenagers, sometimes it's like pulling teeth to get them to talk to you. But when they do, once you do start opening them up, they just start just coming to you, talking more and more. So as a step parent, I didn't think about grace. I just thought about how I was raised, and like, this is what I did. Like, I was doing this and this and this at your age, but our upbringings, our backgrounds, our everything is different. And so understanding my kids and their experiences, her high school experience, his experience at school, gives me a better perspective, so I can learn how to discipline them in a very fair way and give them the grace where they deserve it and where they don't deserve it, because we're human, we make mistakes. I let them know when I make mine.
When I think about discipline, again, I'm 25 years old. Discipline, when I was growing up, you talk about
Get that switch.
What do they call it now? Gentle parenting?
Gentle parenting, yeah.
I don't think my mother knew how to spell gentle. Okay, there was no gentle parenting.
No.
It was corporal punishment. When you say discipline, discipline was you got tapped up.
Mm-hmm.
You got a whipping. Okay, a whooping. It wasn't even a whipping. It wasn't a spanking. And it wasn't a tap up. It was, you got a whooping.
Had many of those.
Yeah, and so when I think about that, as I thought about that as a parent over the years, where did that come from? Where did that severe corporal punishment come from? Because it wasn't even just at home. The school that I grew up in, the school I went to grade school, all of the teachers had a paddle. Everybody, and so there was a physical punishment. But this is what I've learned. When I think about the word discipline, that's what I think about. You're being disciplined. You're getting a spanking. You're getting a whooping, right? One of the first verses that my children learned after Jesus wept, the shortest verse in the Bible, one of the next verses they learned was, children, foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction will drive it far from them. That's the second verse that they learned.
Rod of correction.
Here goes the rod of correction.
So, because again, that's how I was raised, right? And that's what I thought. And so I told my kids that. Now, here's the deal. I realized that we need to examine our understanding even of that term discipline. Because again, very often discipline for many of us older people, discipline was punishment. Okay, and growing up, that discipline was out of anger. Okay, it was a response to disobedience. It was a response to failure, and it was out of anger. But as I got older, I've come to understand that discipline is really learning the power, the purpose, and the protection of living within boundaries. That's what discipline is. It's learning how to color within the lines, because there's value in coloring within the lines. I think about my daughter when she was little, she was busy. just, matter of fact, her nickname was Little River Never Stops Running. Because she was just always all over the place, right? But for some reason, she got very fascinated with electrical outlets. And she'd walk up to electrical, and she'd want to stick her, I don't know why, but she would want to stick her finger in an electrical outlet. I don't know why, but she would do it. So I would tell her, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. But, you know, the moment you left her alone, you know, he's toddling over and she's trying to stick her finger. So one day, I took her by the hand and I smacked her hand. Don't do that. So, of course, she screamed like I'd beat her with that, you know, because Daddy was not supposed to do that. Daddy was not supposed to hit me. But I spanked her hand. And what happened? Later, I left the room. She goes right back and she does it, but this time she got her wet finger and it shocked her. She never did it again. I didn't spank her because I didn't like her. I didn't even spank her out of anger. I spanked her hand because I was trying to say there is a boundary. Outside of this boundary is danger. If you go outside of this boundary, your life is in danger and your physical comfort is in danger. So therefore, I want to teach you how to stay within the boundaries for your protection.
Right.
When we understand discipline is learning how to live within the boundaries, now I can show grace a little bit more because I'm not trying to get you within the boundaries out of anger. I'm getting you within the boundaries out of love. That might mean that I might need to spank your hand.
Right.
I might mean I need to take away your iPad. It might mean that I need to give you some level of punishment that is hurtful, that not hurtful, that is painful. Surgery is painful, but it is not meant to harm. It is meant to heal. So I think it's learning as a parents and as fathers that no, I don't always have to resort to anger or physical punishment as a tool to express my displeasure and anger. But discipline is teaching you, what do I need to do to help you learn to live within the borders? So let me give you one other illustration. As we look out the windows, you know, right behind us, you look out and you know, it's a few hundred, couple of hundred maybe parking spaces. If you look out there and if that parking lot was full, what would you notice about the parking? The cars would all be perfectly lined up, almost perfectly. There would be a certain amount of space in between them. Why would those cars be lined up that way? What had happened?
They got boundaries. They got the lines to guide them.
The lines, the parking lot lines, right? And so the parking lot lines, there is not a police officer out there saying you must park this way. There's not electronic markers to say, you know, you're beeping, you've grown over the line. There is the parking lot lines have been established that teaches us within community, if we live within these boundaries, it will be orderly, it will be safe, people won't necessarily hit your car, you'll be able to get out whenever you want, and we can maximize this space if we live within those boundaries. It takes discipline to do that. You know people who will park over both lines because they don't want anybody close to their car. But what they're saying is that what I want is more important than what the community has established. Understanding that, teaching our children how to live within those boundaries within themselves, to set boundaries for themselves. I just don't do whatever I want to do. I have to set personal boundaries. I have to set parking lot lines for my own personal self. I have to live in that I can't stay up to 1 o'clock in the morning and think I'm going to be okay getting up at 6 and going to school. I can't eat whatever I want to eat. I got to brush my teeth. I got to wash. I got to take a bath. I can't go 2 weeks without taking a bath and thinking there won't be consequences with kids teasing me at school, calling me stinky.
Right.
Right. You know, and so with that, there needs to be an understanding of personal boundaries. When we teach our children personal boundaries, now it's more easily for them to understand those boundaries within the context of a family. Within a family, wait a minute, we are a unit. And so how do we operate together as a unit, as a family? You know, what do we need to do? Well, everybody has chores to do. Everybody has a job to do. You eat what's put in front of you. You know, you do those, there are things, and wait a minute, there is an authority figures. There's mom and dad that you must submit to. I can't go and beat up my brothers and sisters. I got to clean up my room because the stink that comes out of my room affects the whole house. When I learn to understand those boundaries, then I can understand the boundaries within the community, because I've learned, wait a minute, I am not at the top of the food chain all the time. There are social boundaries. And when I learn those boundaries, now I can operate. And when everybody operates within those boundaries as a community, the community does better. But when there are no parking lot lines in my personal life, in my family, or in the community, every man does what's right in his own eyes.
Right.
When everybody does what's right in their own eyes, you have chaos. And so I think discipline is that we have to make sure that we are not operating out of that punishment, anger-based discipline, but we must operate out of that love-based discipline. Is that I want you to stay within the lines, because that is when you will live your best life. Yeah. When you are living within the parking lot lines of your personal life, of your family, and within the community. And again, my worldview says within spiritually as well, because there is also a spiritual father that I respond to. And he says, I have set boundaries for your life, that if you live within these boundaries, you're going to be safe. But you live outside the boundaries, there's some danger.
Right.
And I know that because I've been here already. So I need you to live within those boundaries. And so understanding grace, understanding those boundaries within that are just critical as parents. And because if we don't teach them, where do they learn it?
From the wrong places.
From the wrong places, or they don't learn it at all. And I've told parents for years, you have every right to tell us, for your children to say, you're not my mom, I don't have to listen to you. And you don't have to teach your children how to live within boundaries. You don't have to. But do us, the rest of the world, a favor. Don't let them out your basement. Keep them in your basement, and don't unleash your children who do not respect boundaries or other people. Don't unleash them on the rest of the world.
Right.
If you want them to only listen to you, then don't put them in contact with other people to whom they have to listen. It's not fair for the rest of the community.
Yep.
That's true.
You know, so you know what, guys, we probably got a whole nother show. We got a whole nother show to talk about this stuff, and we might have to come back and revisit this one, because I know I still have a bunch of questions. I know y'all still got a bunch of questions too.
Definitely.
But I think we're going to stop it here. But before we close out, any final cogitations, agitations, irritations, inspirations, allegations, misinterpretations?
I've definitely got a lot out of this. I'm inspired to implement some of these things that I've taken notes on. I just appreciate this space, honestly. We've talked privately, you know, me and Wes talk, me and you talk, but even just being in this setting, I still get more and more.
I mean, yeah, same thing. I'm just appreciative of the opportunities that we're having right now. Parenting it's a lifelong journey, you know, as we all know, and it just doesn't stop when they turn 18. I would like to say something too. We all went to a basketball game. It was about 2 weeks ago, and I got to witness firsthand, you know, how you interacted with your daughter, your adult daughter now. And that was very inspiring. I was impressed by how you guys, you know, communicated and interacted with each other at this point in your lives. You know what I mean? That's ideally what I would want to see, you know, in my children.
Yeah.
You know, not just the respect, the reverence, but the relationship. You guys still have a great relationship.
Yeah.
You know, so. Yeah.
No, but seriously, I'm seriously though, like especially how she shows up. I mean, it's a choice. I know, you're not forcing her to do it. She wants to be there and supporting you, and it's like, man, you did that.
Yeah.
You know what? And again, that's a result of a whole lot of years of talking. A building relationship. How do you build this relationship so that you minimize the drift? Creating safe space.
Yeah.
Parents, dads should be safe spaces.
Yeah.
That dads should be safe spaces for us to be able to kids to know that in a really rough world, gruff dad is still safe space.
Yeah.
And they need that. They need to know that, man, I messed up, but I still can go back, and I'm not gonna get beat up. And I told you to. No, there are some really important things that we can learn from that. Like I said, I didn't always love Father's Day because I didn't have a dad, and I hated the day, but becoming a father, I think there's nothing more important for me than this, and that being able to set the course for my children, to establish a course. This is how you're supposed to be, and this is how you're supposed to live. And I feel bad for my daughter sometimes because her life is just out there because I'm out there.
Telling all her business.
Telling all her business, and I apologize to her for that sometimes. But I think that they just give me such great material to help other people.
Yeah.
And so because of our experience together, with both of my children, there's just a lot I've learned as a man and stuff. So
yeah, and also too, it's like you're not just raising your child, you're raising your grandchildren. This is about legacy. The things that you're instilling in your kids, you're instilling in your grandkids,
real legacy
as well. So
right.
It's
There was somebody said, when do you start raising your children? It's 20 years before they're born. You start raising your children 20 years before they're born, because how you were parented will very much affect how you've been parented, how you will parent.
Yeah.
And that's really important for us to understand. We are not just dealing with our kids with them right now. I got to look at how is this going to affect them down the road, and what are they going to input, and what is the legacy that I want to leave? What is it that I want my grandchildren to know? I got to think. You have to think about that.
Yeah.
Native Americans talk about what we do impacts 7 generations. We need to be thinking about 7 generations. We need to think about that all the time. So there's so many other things.
I think we got to pick back up on that one on the next one.
We need.
That's a good
I
one.
want us to come back to some of these things. There are still some things that I want to talk about, but for the sake of this, I think we're about an hour and a half now, so I want to stop now. But I think we got a lot more we can come back and continue on this. So thank you all for watching this episode of Real Life Matters. Thank you, Laurance and Wess, for sharing your life and sharing your children with us a little bit, and your stories and your struggles. And I just want to say this to all you men out there who are watching this, young men, to you young men, I want you to understand that I don't care where you start, it's how you finish. And so continue to grow. Even if you don't have a dad in your life, there are men around you that can provide the best good examples. And so I really want to challenge you now to start to think about how your legacy, listen to this, your legacy is not something that you pursue. Your legacy is the scent you leave behind after you're gone. You are establishing your legacy with the decisions that you're making. And so when you are gone, your legacy is what people are going to remember. It's the scent in the room after you're gone. And so don't establish a stink legacy by making stinky decisions. but to say, wait a minute, who do I want to be? What is the scent that I want to leave behind, and begin to live that way, even as a young man? And for your older men, I really want to challenge you. Don't give yourself some grace. Learn from your mistakes, learn from where you are, and say, you know what, I didn't do that as well as I could, but I can do better from this point on. And so, again, we need dads. Dads, we need you. We're coming up on Father's Day here pretty soon. And I just want you to know, fathers, we need you. Our community needs you. Our children need you. Our churches need you. Our businesses need you. Our government needs you. We need strong men of integrity, of wisdom, of purpose, of power, that are operating not in a toxic way, but just in the way that you have been created to be great men. So thank you for joining us. We'll come back to this topic at a different time, and we appreciate your support. God bless you.